Hi, Oleg. Is it pronounced perfectly?
Yeah, hi Adam. Uh, yeah, Oleg is right. This
Perfect.
is
And now, the most important question always, what was your first computer?
oh boy, it was a Pentium, right? I wasn't one of those kids who got their first experience with computers very early. It was a decent Pentium at the time, and we used it with my brother exclusively to play video games.
Ah, which Pentium? Pentium 1, 3?
I think it was one, right? Pentium one, like a hundred megahertz
Yeah,
frequency with a button that made it like 60 megahertz as well, right? So it was
this was
I
the
think it was
turbo button, I think, right?
yes, it was a true button, but it only made it slower. So I think by default it was on,
Hmm.
right? Or at least in our case. And that was very disappointing when we learned that this was a turbo button and then we tried it and it became slower.
Okay.
That was unfortunate.
So it was
Uh,
not one of the first because, as I remember, I think the Pentium started with 66 megahertz and the 133, I think I got one. And then later I got the 200 megahertz. It was K6 from AMD. But so you were already, so you had already a fast Pentium. So what was your favorite game then?
oh, that's an interesting question. I remember, like, I will just give you one that I remember. It was a motorcycle game where you just run forward and then you kind of hit your neighbor riders with like sticks and like
Ah,
chains and everything. I don't remember the name, but we played that for years, not for years, like hours at a time, right? And it was it was a game that we got from a friend,
hmm.
and we used those floppy disks to to carry the game from one computer to the other. And he had to do this because the floppy disks, they don't hold a lot of information, right? It
Yeah.
was what, 1.4 megabytes. So the process was fascinating actually at the time,
Hmm.
right? You compressed the game with this WinRAR utility,
Hmm.
and it split that into packages
Hmm.
that you could grab on the floppy disks, and then there were like a number of those, and you have to carefully carry them over
Okay.
using floppy disks, right?
Yeah.
And then we only had limited amount of those, so it took a few like trips back to the friend house, and then you have to reassemble those, and then some of those were corrupt, and then it was the whole adventure just to game this game, like copy this game from one computer to another. I
Yeah.
think it was back in like early 2000s,
Yeah. I think
maybe
so
like late
because
90s.
I got my Pentium around 1996, 1997, what I remember, and the K6 came later. So I think it should be early 2000s.
Yes, yes. And it was like if I think back, right, that I wouldn't do anything like that now. Like I would just have no patience, right? My attention span is like what, 280 characters at the time, and we like I want my content to be readily available for me, right? And just thinking about how much the technology progressed, that is very fascinating. Thank you for this question. It's a very pleasant memory.
Yeah. You wouldn't do this right now. So a few years ago, I helped to develop something with Angular web framework, and I would prefer rather than splitting a software into floppy disks than doing this again. It's like it downloaded 35,000 files over the network, and what I also spent some time with clouds. And if you create a cloud from the beginning, it is a fiddling without end. I mean, it is like JSON YAMLs, everything flies around. So I would say the technology progressed. We can probably achieve more now, but the fiddling remained the same. I would say, right? So it's not like there's less fiddling. It is as plumbing as it always was, but the output is better than it was years ago.
Yes, but the fiddling shifted, and I think this is a very important distinction. Now, now fiddling is a part of the profession,
Yeah.
right? So you only
Okay.
deal with building the cloud when you are building a cloud, right?
Yeah.
Even like so, the end users who are consumers of your things do not do that, right? And even the end user, like the developers who are the end users, they don't typically fiddle with the cloud like that, right? You go somewhere, you get a Kubernetes engine, some sorts, and then you just deploy your applications, or you can use other building blocks in the cloud, right? But if the fiddling is still there, right, the complexity is still there, but it is shifted towards very specialized people who are hopefully compensated very well for their fiddling.
You are right. You are actually right. This is a very good point. But recently, I also had to install Windows machine, and I bought a license, the official Microsoft license for Windows. I think it was Professional or something. And what I remember, what was really crazy, I had to input, several passwords, then Outlook account, which I had to delete later, but without, I think it was Outlook, and then at the end, even a PIN. So I was actually done with the password, then the Outlook, and then the PIN, and it was for me very annoying because I mean I knew that it's completely pointless. So what I'm doing right now, I just cost my time, and at the end, the Windows worked. It works, but I mean, for me, it is like crazy, right? And then I got another laptop with Windows installed already, and this was a better experience, far better experience. But the problem was the touchpad. To configure that took me also a while. So I would say, but it got significantly better, yes. But as I remember, Windows 95, what I got with the Pentium, I think it was easier. There was one disk, and it just ran or didn't run. But it was not like, you had to input several... you only had to input, I remember, the license key. And what I found out, if you divide it should be, if it divides by 7, so you could just put just the 7 number, it will still work. So, but you are right. But what also shifted now, Linux is the opposite. If you install Linux, it works out of the box. It was amazing. So I had an old machine, my old server, and just for fun, I installed, I think, Ubuntu. And this was like the opposite of my experience 20 years ago, where I didn't know just to enter the chipsets and whatever. It just worked out of the box. So, yeah. But the observation is really interesting, that for the end users, the computer became just a device, right, which they can just use, usually. And for the programmers, we have still to fiddle, but we can achieve more.
Oh, absolutely. And just the hardware resources, right? Thinking about this, you can casually get like a hard drive with a few terabytes.
Yeah.
Like if that number didn't exist, for me at least, in the early 2000s.
Yeah.
Right? I didn't operate like it was not of course I imagined that like if you add enough zeros to the right of the number, you get to those large numbers, but it was not like something real. And now this is the thing that you can just, you go to, I don't know, Amazon, and you select a few and you ponder whether like extra 20 euros are worth like those 2 terabytes to 4 terabytes like upgrade.
Yeah.
And this is mind blowing.
But for us it's 7, but for the end users it's pointless. Because if you think about this, what the end users are doing, they are taking HDR, high quality images of something which is absolutely pointless, and it takes a lot of space. And for us, if you stay away from multimedia just for coding, whatever, it's like 1 terabyte hard disk. We cannot fill that, right? So back then I had trouble, to fill a Linux distribution on my hard drive. So I had to be thoughtful, which distribution. And now you can just install everything, and there's still enough room. The problem is, of course, multimedia. So if you take videos, this is what we didn't have before. So if you store videos or pictures, music is not a problem, but videos and pictures, that's and this grows. I'm just if we get AR or VR goggles or 3D, then it will still explode. So I think the problem is now the multimedia stuff, which consumes lots of memory. But to your splitter. I wrote a similar program with Java. So actually, I zipped a huge file and split it to several disks. This was I wanted really to do that because I had a similar problem to yours, to move databases, stuff like that. So when you stopped playing and did something different, so batch or bash scripting or whatever. So what was the trigger to do that?
Oh, yeah, there wasn't, to be honest. Right, in the high school, I wasn't a nerd, right, in the proper definition of that. But I played chess, right? So I didn't hang out with cool kids, and I hung out with other kids who were helping the school administration with the website and
how you started to play chess
stuff like that.
Just one day you just bought the game and started playing. So this is interesting.
No, my grandpa, he taught us, and apparently he just recently kind of spilled the beans that he learned to play chess just to teach us himself. So a big shout out to him, right? And he taught us, and we were playing for quite a bit of time with him. And it's very fascinating because at a certain point of time, like we started reading the books about chess, like, and I mean, me and my brother, he was 2 years older than me, right? So we started reading books about chess and we started playing between ourselves because as kids, we had like lots of free time. And then we improved, of course. And then at a certain point of time, we started beating the grandfather quite easily, right? And it was kind of very natural, right? And then we started beating him the way that we just like would glance at the board, like make a move and then think about something else. And he was actually trying to play. So we started getting a little bit better. And then they were actively asking us to join the chess club. And we were, at least I remember, I was very I was a little bit afraid because I thought that I was playing very badly, right? Because especially like chess is a cruel game, right? Like you can play well and then one mistake and like everything kind of fails like a house of cards. And then I kind of saw how badly I played. And then I was very reluctant to join the chess club because I thought like there are people play very well and they will absolutely beat me. And this would be a terrible experience and I would hate it. So I didn't go there almost up until I was like 11 and a half. And then we went there and there was, we talked to the trainer and there was a tournament for the kids of our age or something for the newbies. And we absolutely crushed it. And we shared the first place there because we actually played quite a bit of time and with experience, we just had a level. So, and then we continued playing. I think this initial success was a good motivator to continue playing. And it was decent. Estonia is very small, right? So I'm from Estonia and Estonia is very small. So, for kids, they have those brackets of age in which kids compete, like under 10, under 12, 14, 16 years old, 18. And so for every age bracket, there weren't that many good people, right? And then, for several years, I kind of sort of competed with my peers. And one time even like got to the European Youth Championship. That was an eye-opening experience because there were good players in there, right? Because they were the best from the other countries. And there I performed rather poorly. But I think it was a very useful skill.
Yeah.
And I think it helped me a lot. It taught me several things. And I think the most important ones is the ability to lose. Right, this training to lose because you lose ton of games, absolutely, and everyone is crushing because there is only you to blame. Mm-hmm. Right, there is no teammates, there is no weather conditions, there is no nothing. There is just you did something stupid and you lost. Right, and then when you do that again and again and again, you sort of get accustomed to this feeling of you being kind of silly and persevering through those challenges. And then I think that taught me quite a bit about how to tackle problems. And I think it helped me in my developer career as well, right? Because it's very similar. You kind of navigate the code base and you do some changes and you have this grand plan of how the things should turn out. And of course, there is no opponent who is kind of like messing with the plans, but there is just the harsh reality of the complexity. Right. And then you do things and then sometimes you break the build and sometimes you like just hit a dead end and things don't work. And I think the skill transferred from chess was like, okay, yeah, let's try it again. Right. Let's learn from our mistakes and let's do it again and again and again. And that was without, feeling kind of bad for you not performing because sometimes like when you tackle a hard problem and I know it's very demotivating and I know very many people in the community kind of voiced this concern of the imposter syndrome, right? Like you look at social media, you look at your peers and well, obviously everyone tries to like put their best foot forward online, mm-hmm. right? And you mostly see the highlights of the lives of your peers and colleagues and everyone, mm-hmm. right? So you think that, oh my God, they're the amazing specialists. And of course they are. but you just, for yourself, you see those lows as well. And given how life is, you mostly observe the lows for your life.
Which is good.
Because
but
they stick in memory more
in
as
which city was it in Estonia?
So I lived in Tallinn, which is
okay.
the capital. It's a rather small city, like less than 500,000 people, and it is much better now. So if you haven't visited recently and you have a chance, I would absolutely recommend that. Typically not during the winter, or maybe winter Christmas break is good as well, but the summer months are more pleasant.
And I think we had the same grandpa. The only difference was I never was able to beat him. So and sometimes he left me win, which made me angry. But I try to win. There was no chance to win chess. And then he told me that you can play in chess club. And for me it was like not that they were smart, because I was afraid of the consequences. I thought, okay, if I go to the chess club, I will have to spend several hours just training. And what also I think I observed what they are doing. They were like opening scenes from famous players or whatever, and I thought, what I thought is I'm just playing for fun, and they already see what happens. You know what I mean? So if I play chess, I enjoyed the game, and I just played, and it worked well. But my suspicion was that the others are able to analyze everything, which I didn't. I just played, and maybe this is true or not. So now I'm curious, because I'm also a chess player. So you play by intuition, or you were? Of course, I knew that what the other will do if there's a stupid situation. But was it like a strategy, or you just played chess?
Oh no! So initially, of course, we just played, right? Yeah. And then I think the next skill that you develop, you start calculating a little bit. So you kind of sort of do if you imagine like how you would program a chess engine, right? You sort of do the same, but very slowly. So you sit there and you think, okay, I will go here, and they will go here, and I will do this, and then I will do that. So this is one thing, but of course, this doesn't scale. Because your human brain
how
is
many
capable
moves
of processing.
In advance were you able to see this?
Oh, this is a very different question, right? Because you never actually calculate the full tree, right? Because it's just impossible.
Yeah.
So you calculate sort of the principal variations. So in every position, you look at that and you determine a couple of candidate moves.
Yeah.
Right. And before even you start calculating, you kind of sort of assess the position, which is very important. And I think this is a more advanced skill. You kind of sort of try to see where there are the weaknesses and where are the pieces that could hang, and then so you assess where your strengths are and in general what you want to achieve, right? For example, you will I want to place this knight on this outpost where it will be an excellent piece, right? And then you start thinking about candidate moves, which is the moves that you're gonna sort of calculate deeper. And those start with forcing moves, like checks, captures, or attacks or threats, and then sort of non-threatening moves, which are just positional moves or something that is sneaky, right? And the forcing moves are easy to calculate, because forcing moves probably mean forcing responses as well, right? So you prune the tree very, very efficiently. So you can calculate several moves, like 10 moves ahead or anything like this, right? And then you sort of, at a certain point of time, you stop this calculation, either when you think that you kind of can assess the resulting position well. So you see okay, you got to the checkmate, very good. Or you got to the position with extra material, very good. Or you kind of have a feeling that would be a winning position for you, and then you stop calculating. And then you kind of sort of calculate other variations from there, and then you pick whichever results in the best position that you found, right? So with forcing moves is easy.
So I think the sneaky, the sneaky part, I think this is what I learned are the tricks. I had some openings, and it's like I knew, okay, this is unusual. If I do this, and the other my opponent doesn't recognize what I would do, it will lose. There are some tricks which you could apply in every situation, and I try to see how smart is the other guy. And in case it could work or not, and this is what and the forcing moves. I didn't knew that there are such terms. I just and the forcing moves are obvious, because if I know, say I don't know, if I do something which which will how to call it? I don't even know how the figures are called in English. But if I will treat you, then you will do something because it is like it is, right? So this is easy. And the sneaky moves is like, okay, if I do this for a longer period of time and you don't recognize what I'm actually doing, then I will gain some advance because I can position down my strategic figures in certain places. Okay, so this is what I also did, and I enjoyed it a lot. But I didn't knew the terms, they're like forcing moves and sneaky moves, so I just did it. And
yeah, sneaky move is not a term, but yeah, but like that's how you play. Yeah, and from there you like develop like intuition, and it's sort of like the same with code as well, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes you look at a piece of code and you see that, okay, this resembles decent code, right?
Yeah.
Or you see that something is incorrect, and like what we call code smells.
Yeah.
Right. Like sometimes it's an obvious something, like just plain incorrect, or something that is an issue waiting to happen.
Yeah.
Right. But sometimes you just like have a feeling that the code looks a little bit different from what you've seen before, and you're like a little bit suspicious of that.
Yeah.
So kind of like that, but with the game of chess.
Very good. So I also enjoyed chess a lot, and I also I would say I was not very successful among my peers. I was, but the next problem was my physics teacher. It was a woman, but she was even more incredible. I had no idea. I think she was also she won probably some championships, as I remember. And it was impossible to win. But I tried, hard because but impossible. So okay, cool. So chess. This was your entry into programming.
Yeah. And I hanged out with the kids, and they did some work on the school website, and I did a little bit of HTML and then some basic. They did some like the website on the PHP backend, right? A little bit of with them, right? But not professional or anything. So I just look at the code and fiddled with it, and edited the files on the FTP or something. And then properly started programming, what you could call a programming, only in university, to be honest.
Okay.
Right. And Java was my first language.
Huh. But if you saw the PHP, was it fun for you? So you wanted to do this, or it's just for you was boring?
No, that was the peer pressure.
Okay.
Right, I hung out with those guys, and like it quite kind of nice, and they did some things there, and then I was like, oh, maybe I could be useful as well, and then we just,
okay. But you said you were not one of the cool kids because you played chess, but the others was very cool kids because they did PHP?
No, they were
even worse.
I didn't hang out with cool kids, right? But I hang out with the other group of kids who were like sort of closer to the administration, because they were helping with various IT utilities in school, right?
And why you like them? Because
just we were just friends somehow.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, in general, I wasn't, and even now I'm like a very easily amused person, right? You can easily nerd snipe me or just entertain me by showing something simple and like, and I would be like, oh, very cool, right? And then I would try to hang out with you because you are an interesting person.
Okay.
So, and that was that. But then of course the university changed everything.
Why you started to study computer science? That
is interesting. I don't know. Really don't know. Because I had good grades in school, so I could sort of pick. In Estonia, we had this system where your grades and your like school examination results determine like where you can apply.
How good were you?
And only
grades.
I was decent.
So how much you learned for that?
How much what? Sorry.
How much you learned, at home for you?
At school?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, well, all my time, to be honest.
Okay. Because I'm always interested. If someone has, very good grades, I'm always interested how much work is behind. So this is.
Yes. I think so. At the time, it didn't seem like I did a lot.
Okay.
Right. I wasn't very consistent with homeworks, and I wasn't the best behavior student, right? So I copied the solutions from others.
Okay.
Right. And then kind of like I did it in a smart way. When I would understand their solution, I'd just rewrite that. But like I did put a lot of work. And now looking back, I did put like a lot of work. So I probably could have done that with less time investment.
Why you did it?
Like, I don't know. It was just that's what I did.
Okay.
Right. I didn't have any questions about that.
Okay.
Right. So I was maybe you could call me smart, but I wasn't wise.
Okay.
Right. So, and now when I look at people and when I see them do like really smart things, right? I always marvel at their like capacity for understanding life. Like, for example, people do internships, right? Mm-hmm. And the students do internships. Mm-hmm. And for me, in the school or even in the early university years, right? That was never an idea that I entertained. I don't know why, but like that just wasn't in my picture. And like you could, like an internship is a very good opportunity to join a team of like really the cutting edge research somewhere doing, mm-hmm. I don't know, at a large company. Mm-hmm. Right? And then probably if you do well there, you will end up working for the company. Mm-hmm. So we see, for example, that quite a bit of that was Oracle, mm-hmm. Oracle Labs mm-hmm. team and the interns that are joining, right? And now I see that is absolutely possible, right? And the teams are we are welcoming. So I assume like 10 years ago when I was a student, then people were also, the teams were welcoming and nice. Mm-hmm. And that was such a great idea at the time. Like, and I would absolutely enjoy that. And probably that would change my life in considerable ways to the better. Yeah. But I never thought that this is a possibility. And I just didn't bother.
Yeah, but this is different. Now this is not smartness because sometimes someone have to help you or at least show you, the opportunities. If it is not even on your horizon, then it is. And there are lots of things which you don't think about, which are actually great ideas. And if someone will just point you lightly to the direction, it will change everything, right? So this is not like smartness. I don't know how to call it. It's just sometimes you don't see the opportunity, and you think hard work is good. So you are working a lot, but there is no output. And sometimes, okay, I work less and do this, and there will be more output, productivity or efficiency or whatever. You were not efficient, maybe, right, back then?
No. I wouldn't call myself not efficient, right? Because I did things like, so I call it being wise, mm-hmm. The wisdom stat, right? But because you need to understand how life works, right? And you need to understand a little bit how, like, the point of the university is like half of the point of the university to establish the network, for example. Yeah. Right. Yeah. I didn't know that. Like, nobody told me that. Well, I mean, people were probably saying that, but I maybe wasn't there or wasn't listening. Yeah. Right. Maybe I was doing some homework or something. Right. So, but yeah. I think if I would go like 15 years back now, right, and I would be like 16 again, I would do things very differently, and I was also study differently. Right? Okay. Yeah, but I have a job now, and I think it's a very, very interesting project, and it's a great place in life to be.
Perfect. So you started computer science because you could. You had decent grades, and so you liked that or not? So what's your the first year at the university?
Oh, the first year was interesting because, well, in Estonia, the higher education. Now there is a little bit more freedom. Maybe it was more freedom than back then, but the default path was that some courses were in Estonian, mm-hmm. right? Which are like the kind of more general courses, mm-hmm. right? And for the computer science, that was physics and some calculus, mm-hmm. And something else like that, like how to do measurements and with like actual physical measurements and whatnot, and some hardware. It was very interesting to study in Estonia because my first language is Russian. So in mm-hmm. school, I was learning Russian, and then studying in Estonian was very, very.
They're different. How different are the languages, Estonian and Russian?
Oh, the worlds apart. Okay. So Russian is a Slavic language, mm-hmm. and Estonian is this from a different group of languages. Mm-hmm. And Estonian is like similar to Finnish and apparently Hungarian.
Okay.
So those three are from the same group. And if you know Finnish or Hungarian, or you've heard them, they're very different from, for example, other languages that people speak in the region.
Finnish, I can imagine. But if you grew up in Tallinn, which is the capital of Estonia, and you couldn't speak Estonian, why that? Because the Russian forced you to speak Russian, right? For a long time. And then the university somehow change their mind and say, okay, now we are Estonian and we should speak Estonian. This is like a long story short, like this?
Well, the long story short, that was the Soviet Union until the 1991. Yeah. And I was born in 87. Okay. So when that collapse happened, I was like 4 years old. And then for the few years forward, of course, the system was still very much based on Russian language as well, right? So because of the inertia. But of course, after gaining independence, Estonia, and we wanted to kind of preserve the culture and the independence, and that starts with the language as well. So more and more things. I don't know how it was before, so like I'm not an authority on that. This is my version.
But just for my understanding.
Yeah, more and more things started to kind of move towards being Estonian first. Maybe they moved immediately, but I just didn't experience that. Right, and then the higher education was in Estonian.
Okay.
That was just the norm.
But this is for you is a mission impossible. I mean, between Russian and Hungarian, I would say they are worlds apart. So it was impossible to get anything.
No, but like, but I learned Estonian in school, and that was we had a lot of lessons, of course. No. I like by the 9th grade, I could speak in normal like life situations. Like I would go to the library or a doctor, or I don't know, like ask the directions and like normal conversations for I don't know. 9th grade is 15 years old. Like for the things, and by the end of the 12th grade, like it was supposed to be at least an intermediate level. And the intermediate level in languages, which is also very fascinating. Like it is you know enough to communicate, and you know enough to actually consume any information. It's just sometimes you have to translate that into this. Like if you imagine your proficiency in languages goes from basic concepts to being able to express yourself freely, but in very simple terms. You kind of you get the bytecode of the language, right? And then you kind of like you explain things. So I'm doing this and that, and I'm going there, and I do that, and I want to achieve something, right? And then you add color and proficiency and fluency and vocabulary on top of that to kind of communicate efficiently and nicely. So by the end of the school, I could.
And my observation is, after that, come the next phase. We are removing the stuff and try to communicate more efficiently. So this is like what the great writers are doing. They are able, to write in short sentences or speak very clearly. I would say this is the last level, right? If you are able to express yourself in short terms. So this is.
Like imagine you start with some basic concepts like conditional blocks and loops and everything, and then you sort of learn Java, and then you sort of learn Scala, and then you can do whatever, and you're a magician, right? And then you kind of sort of move back towards maybe Kotlin, right, which is a little bit more expressive than Java, but also not as complex and
the funny story with Scala is. I did Java, and then there was Scala everywhere, and everyone said, okay, you have to also to do Scala, and my strategy back then was to wait until Java will be not enough for my purposes, and then learn Scala. But in advance, I started to learn Scala, and I used the Scala test. So this is like a JUnit, right? So and it worked okay. So the compilation was very painfully slow, but it's okay. Who cares? I mean, let's see. And then I took a look. I clicked at some of the asserts at the Scala code, and I was absolutely not able what's going on. So I mean, what's going on? I cannot understand what's going on. And then I ask someone, it's like, you don't understand this because you are just application developer. And the Scala, library developers, they write the libraries, and application developers have to consume the libraries. So, okay, this is really true, yeah. So, okay, then I deleted immediately the entire Scala test, so they will never fly, and back to Java from then. So, since then, I never used Scala again, and I would say it was the right decision. I was lucky, but this was like, But at your university, so you learned Java. You started to learn Java. You enjoyed that immediately or not? Or what's the story with you and Java?
So I think I like Java quite a bit, right? So because my first year at the university was 2005, right? And then we started Java with some very simple Java things, and the programs and just the structures and everything. And I never felt the verbosity of that or any of the problems like that. Right, so it was very natural, and maybe because I saw some like PHP before, or maybe because it resembled very much how chess works, right? Like the conditionals and chaining the conditionals and then doing like loops. All those kind of felt very natural to me. And also, like I think one thing it's very fascinating to me is since my first language is Russian, like all the code looks to me as code, right? I don't feel that as normal like words.
Yeah.
So if for me, an if block, right? It's not the if that I'm saying when I'm talking in English, right? That is that particular if in code is a token that has a special meaning, right? Like, and for someone with the first language being English, probably I imagine that would be different, because that would be like a natural if for them, like as a part of the English. So I learned it just as a code system, and then I didn't see anything wrong with that. And I think the first course we did some basic language things, and one of the final things was to paint like a snowman using the AWT and some paint, and then and you think about that this is like sort of a silly task, which it is, but it also kind of ties together. You need to have some functions probably, right? And then you have to create some helper methods to draw like circles and everything, and then they like abstract away the use of graphics and some conditionals and this and that, and that was interesting. And then the second course was the second half a year was the object-oriented programming.
What you did in leisure? So after university, you still hacked Java or did something completely different?
To be honest, I don't remember. I read some books.
You're not that old. Come on, you don't want to tell. Then you were.
Yeah. No. It's just not like that. I didn't do anything bad, right? I didn't do anything.
This is what I suspected,
I didn't. Yeah. I didn't do anything that is like kind of not worth remembering. I hanged out with my peers, and I found a group of friends, and we did some juggling, and I still played some chess, though very leisurely, without actually training, right? And so somehow I never. I did some programming at like free time, but nothing substantial. Surprisingly, I don't have any cool projects to show.
Okay.
For that time.
This surprises me, because if you like at a university, I would suspect now with your chess background, you would hack all the time or create a chess game or whatever, right?
Yeah, and many people did. Surprisingly, the internet is full of various chess engines and chess websites and everything. But unfortunately, I cannot claim any authorship for that. Maybe because studying was actually not easy, right? Yeah. Like especially first few years, like the courses in Estonian were consuming some time. And it wasn't as straightforward. And also, like maybe living in a separate city, so like the life came onto me, right? And then I don't have anything to show for those years.
And were your grades still decent?
Yeah, they were okay. Somewhere first 2 years definitely, and then at some point in time I joined the company and I started working, and then the grades obviously they like fell. Quite considerably. Like for example, and it was very interesting because I was working and then I was studying, right? And then when you do both, and for one of those you get paid, and for the other you don't, right? The other never wins a competition for your time.
Yeah.
Which is also a lesson that I kind of learned there. I think it's obvious when you think about that, but as I said, like I was not wise, so I wasn't thinking, so I had to experience that to learn from that. And so it never won, which is kind of the same way if you think about that. If you're currently holding a full-time job or like a job where you actually get paid money, and for example, you do some open source at the side, it's very rarely that when there are like deadlines or anything, that your hobby work will win the battle for your time.
Yes.
So that happens because obviously your incentives are where your compensation is. Right. So unless you are like well funded, and then you don't care for your job. Right. But then the grades kind of were falling. So that was one aspect. But the other aspect was interesting because we still had the courses for where you had to like program some things. Right. For example, we did some course in distributed computing and everything. And the other aspect, how the work influenced my academia studies, was that I couldn't, how like you often we think that the code from academia is kind of not very like real world life, because people there just want to make the thing work, and then it works, and it's kind of like in that shape, right? And at work, you know that you have to maintain that code, so you kind of wrap it into the test suite, and you try to provide the documentation for that, and then you have to you try to clean up the API. and make it like consumable and everything. So you do a lot of like code related activities besides making the code work.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I like, and when you start doing that, it's very hard to actually not do that. Mm-hmm. So for the courses and for my university, I started doing all the coding assignments kind of were with the same code quality, right? I tried to like produce some tests and here and there, and it was very hard because lots of them weren't like dedicated to that, and there was no time to like learn the things. So we had the course in Haskell, for example, right? And then what I know it's a beautiful language, but to me that one course just ruined the experience because I had to I didn't understand it well enough, and then I just threw things at the compiler until it stopped complaining, and then when it compiled, like in Haskell, if it compiles, it works, right? Yeah. So that was the extent of it.
Yeah.
But for the courses where I understood sort of what I was doing, I was trying to build like software for that. I
had a different problem. So I also worked during my study, and what I recognize is that some things which get taught at the university, they are just not right. So they're actually pointless. And this was my motivation problem sometimes. And I was like, okay, I have to learn something which is absolutely pointless. I know it right now, and I just did it because I want it. But this is a little bit more dangerous than anything else. You started with Java in 2005, so I think with Java 5, right? So you started right away with annotations.
Yeah, and generics.
So crazy.
I never experienced Java without generics. One of the spoiled ones.
Yeah, and without annotations, even more interesting, because without annotations, you would have to write lots of XML code. So and annotations killed that. So this is
yes, but surprisingly, it didn't happen overnight. Well, not surprisingly, but it didn't happen overnight. So, like for example, at the university, I don't think we studied or we learned about annotations, or we kind of saw the potential in those. And even like I remember my first web applications, Spring applications with some Tomcat, it was all configured using XML.
The interesting part with Spring is that what I remember is back then in Spring, there was in the official Spring documentation that the annotations are not meant for production. So the XML is the way, for production. This was a very long in the Spring documentation because many developers point me to that. And for me, it was completely different because I worked with Java EE and J2E, and you had to write the XML code. And in one point of time, after 1 year, no one wrote that. It was generated by a tool called Xdoclet. So you wrote like Java doc comments, and they looked very similar to annotations. It was like at EJB name, what I remember, for instance, or and I think I had already conversations with different developers at Sun back then and Oracle, that this was like the idea also that you could do something like this with Java. And then Xdoclet was more or less pointless, and all the annotations became all the doclets, it's called, the proper name is doclets, became annotations. So for me, as it came out, I deleted immediately all the XML, everything, and I used to know the annotations from day one because I got better code completion. The problem with the Java doc part, I had to use specific Eclipse tool, and control space didn't work very well. It worked most of the times, but not very good. But in annotations, it was just beautiful because it didn't compile. So, and with that, I was able to delete a lots of plumbing, XML configuration, and you said Spring. I look at the Spring, it's like they are all crazy. Why they enjoy XML? So for me, it was not understandable back then. And then they killed the XML, and then they became very similar. So my world in Java E and J2E, and then the XML.
I think it's just the question of inertia.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and
exactly.
Like if you think, it's very important to maintain that. And this was like, for as much as I can remember, one of the core strengths of Java, mm-hmm. The language and the platform, and most of the successful projects in the Java ecosystem mm-hmm. also kind of recognize that and recognize their own weight in the ecosystem. Mm-hmm. So, for example, currently, like a conservative, like if we estimate Spring framework and like Spring Boot and those technologies will take a very large chunk, like more than half, maybe like closer to like 3/4 or 80% of the like web applications written in Java, right? And then, for example, you cannot, I don't think you cannot or should impose any decisions like that. Oh, let's stop using XML and then let's start using annotations right away. You just you just cannot, because you have the mass, and that mass of people and code and projects move forward, and you can only kind of herd that into the path that you think is good for the future. So yeah, I think even back then as well, it was quite the case. So maybe thinking, I don't know, like I don't particularly remember that Spring said that annotations are not good for production.
No, what I remember, it was like there was AutoWired specifically, and there were talks where they said, okay, annotations back then can be slow back then, and XML was faster. And I forgot actually. And for me, it was, so okay, whether it is faster or not, I will use annotations because it's more maintainable. I don't care. Yeah. And I just measured that, and it was good enough. And I said, okay, now whether this is 100 milliseconds faster or not, the deployment time, I don't care at all. I will use it, done. And I delete from then. I never wrote XML again. But at the university, you did some distributed programming in Java, and then you started working. Why you started to work? Just for fun? Because you said, you didn't saw the opportunity to be an intern in a company, but you start working, so it's even better.
Yeah. But like I started working for like a local company, right? And we just did like web development of applications with Java and everything. And,
with Java?
Yeah. It was Java. It was the normal tech stack at the times.
So Spring or Java? What do you use back then?
It was Spring, and it was also the UI framework called Aranea.
Okay.
And so this was the company where
never heard about the framework. What is it?
Yeah. It was sort of an in-house, but it was open source, but in-house. Right, so this is the company from which the guys who created the zeroturnaround initially came off, right? So JRebel was developed in there. So Evgeny Kabanov and Thomas Schirmer and the guys were working there. And it is still, the company still exists and thrives currently as well. I think they changed the names, but it was a great company back then, and it's a good company back now, right? And we just, so they had some tools.
You applied for the job?
Yeah. I applied for a job. Someone recommended me. I did the task, which was I think it was implementing a chat application on Tomcat. So a simple chat application, and it was, of course, the UI was horrendous, but the main thing was that it worked. I think it mostly assessed that I could read through the docs and kind of glue together enough pieces of like servlets and components to make a working program. And then I worked there, and it was eye-opening. How? Because even back then they had some new code, and it was very interesting. They had also the old components. And my first job, it was in the team that was doing the project for the hospital, for the clinics. And of course, they had like some other systems in place already for, I don't know, radiology and whatnot. And there was quite a bit of messaging and JMS, and then everything went into the database, and then you had to like the communication with messages, right? Like the errors would accumulate overnight, and then you would go and resolve conflicts and figure out how to tie things together and make the data that is available in the system. You kind of had to massage that into the way, not the actual like diagnosis or anything like that, but the shape of data, like connecting documents with people in a way that the system would correctly process that. And
so you had to spend some time with HL7. I think this is like a XML format, right, in the hospital.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. HL7. It's not XML. It's a text-based format with post delimiting the information. Yeah, and then you send those messages back and forth, and they have the different shape. And we used that, and then we used some XSLT transformations for massaging that to the messages that went to the database. And that was a very fascinating project, because it immediately taught me about how the abstraction inside our machines, inside the computer, are very different from the real world. Like, for example, if you think about the medical system, there are patients, right? And a patient is a person. So they would have name, they would have the identity code and other things. And that is just normal because you and I, we have names, right? It's you cannot, like, very rarely think about the person not having a name or any identifiable information. But for the health system, that happens left and right. Right? Like people, like teams pick up somebody unconscious somewhere or I don't know, like just random, and there is a name and there is a person and they need to take care of that person, and then they cannot even talk to that. So there would be like a row in the database without names, right? And then you had to design your system in a way that processes that incomplete data normally, which was very interesting. So that was very
pragmatic, right? Pragmatic
I think I learned very, very much in that project and that system.
When you left the company,
I joined a different company, like sort of across the street, called Playtech, and they were doing the online gaming system, online gaming
in Java.
Yeah, in Java. So that was the casinos and like slots machines and everything like that. And it was interesting, and it was a little bit different because there, most of the primitives in the server and the communication was obviously developed in-house, and that was without frameworks. So there the code did like dependency injection by hand, and you sort of how people nowadays say, like, oh, why do you need dependency injection? Just create objects with new and pass it into the constructors, right? So that's what kind of the style of code there, and it was a little bit low level, and there were more questions about or procedure about the concurrency. So there were different threads, and the components were separated, right? So you had a client, but you also kind of sort of had the microservice. We didn't call it that, of course, but there was a microservice infrastructure where different components on the back end would kind of be responsible for particular tasks or something.
When was it?
And it was
which year?
2008, 8.
This is interesting because exactly at the same time I was in a company which you did exactly the same, and they were Python developers, and I convinced them to use Java, and we used Glassfish v3 back then for the task. So dependency injection, everything out of the box, and it works until now. And really interesting that you spent the same time in with very similar companies. And we also did casinos, blackjack. What I remember, I have no idea about casinos. So I remember how many variants blackjack actually had, and they were like it was crazy how. And product management told us, you did this variants, and then we started to introduce fitness, because we wanted that they write the rules which get automatically validated. So interesting. So we have almost we are living in parallel universe. So we did certain things exactly at the same time, which is interesting.
Yeah.
And what was the front end in the company? The casino. In my case, it was Adobe Flex.
I think we had some sort of a web front end like that. I think it was I think maybe it was a Flash. Yeah. Maybe Flex or something like that. Yeah,
Flash and Flex.
Right? We also had the native clients, right? So it was the for example the Windows clients, Windows client, and it was written in C++, and it was just a native application. And it was very interesting. Like I learned a lot about casinos, and I learned about slots, and then it was one memory from there I had when I had to implement a game, like the logic for the back end of the game, right? And then I didn't have my input was kind of sort of a description of how it works in a spreadsheet and the payouts for certain combinations and everything, and of course. So how we did, of course, like for all of that is strictly regulated, right? So there are tests that like would play this game for like a long period of time, and then the payout had to be like a certain number. It's like, for example, like 98%, right? Because the casino cannot rob its users, right? So it had to be fair. And then I submitted that, and then it didn't match. It didn't match with the expected math. And of course, you cannot debug that because it doesn't tell you where the issue is. Like, it just tells you that in the long run, like, the payout wasn't what is supposed to be according to the math and the expectations of the randoms. And I had to debug that, and I couldn't, because my input was just a spreadsheet, and like my tests were directly converted from that spreadsheet. And then the guys told me, okay, like, yeah, go on this other floor in this building there, and there's a physical slot machine, and just go and play your version and play the machine, and use your version to kind of like pass the inputs from the machine and see where the outputs fail, like where the outputs will be different. And I spent the day like doing diligently that, playing the slots machine and inputting my things. Found one bug, and I fixed that one bug of the payout. There was some condition that wasn't properly specified or something, and then we rerun the tests. I played the game. Diligently, and we fixed it, right? And then luckily that was the only issue with that, right? And then the payouts were correct, and then the rest of the tests were kind of correct as well. And then we shipped it. I don't remember the name of the game or anything like that, but it was very interesting because I had to develop something that mimics the real world thing. That was very cool.
And then what happened then? Then you stopped to work at Playtech?
Yes, and I joined Zeroturnaround. Which is
the real zero turnaround, or the
yes, the real zero turnaround. Yeah, the company that developed JRebel and the liverebel at the time, and then XRebel afterwards, and those kind of JVM tools, Java tools for the Java ecosystem that kind of were very interesting. And it was one, like, if you think about that, from web applications to kind of writing your software by hand, like with in-house frameworks and with just pure Java, right? That was a step further down the stack, right? Because the JRebel and other tools were Java agents, which are one level deeper.
So I mean, you joined them. You knew what to expect, right? Or no?
Oh, no, absolutely not.
Not? Okay. Because, I mean, it's crazy. So, okay. So what was your first day at Zero Turnaround? Crying. If you saw the Java agents, you started to cry maybe. It's like, okay, I will never understand what's going on, right?
No. It was actually like, so I joined the liverebel team, which, and liverebel, like, so JRebel was the flagship project and product, which was of course the tool that allows you to kind of reload classes within the running JVM process, right? And then liverebel was this kind of step forward from that into creating this and applying the same logic towards applications running in production, right? So it would also use, like, you would instrument your application with the Java agent, and then it would receive the whole new version of the application, right? And then it would either swap the classes, and then by that time we figured out that just swapping classes is never enough, right? And then it would it was split into two versions, like sort of an agent and kind of watchdog for that would kind of demonize itself, and then it would be able to restart your application, like stop the existing application and start a new version, right? And it all communicated back to the central web application, the console, right? And then you could kind of monitor your fleets, your Java applications from on the server, and then you could restart or patch them with a new version automatically through this one thing. And then on top of that, we started doing like advanced features, like, for example, it would kind of inject itself, since you are a Java agent, and Java agent has like a more or less full control over the JVM, what it's running there, right? So because you can transform the bytecode of all of the classes, and then if you do the native Java agent through, then you have the unlimited power in the JVM, right? So you can do whatever, right? So what it would do, it would inject itself between your application, so it can kind of intercept the traffic. And then we start doing the like sort of rolling restarts, where you would have multiple instances running, and we would reroute the traffic to another instance. Just from the application itself would become kind of sort of a small load balancer, and then you would like reroute the traffic, and then when that is done, you can safely restart the application after it's not doing anything for the users. So it was a very elaborate piece of software, and I think it was ahead of time. And then that was its problem, because apparently how the future, now the past, has shown is that we never kind of got to the point where that was a predominant deployment model.
Mm-hmm.
And the world shifted into running into containers.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, the orchestration then shifted out of the containers to a different like layer entirely in the stack, and that sort of thing that became irrelevant
Mm-hmm.
and not needed. But it was very interesting. And writing a Java agent actually it's surprisingly easy.
Yeah.
Like it's surprisingly
But back to that
hard
observation, what I could see that this such similar technology could come back, because the crazy decomposition into many running processes, it makes everything for lots of use cases unnecessarily complex and too expensive. And having, let's say, one larger machine with a monolithic application could be in lots of cases cheaper, easier to understand, and easier to maintain. And what I already recognized, that if I mention monolith, actually this week I will give a talk how to create a great monolith. No one is opposed anymore. And 7 years ago or 10 years ago, I wrote the first blog post like monoliths are great. There was a huge discussion. But now, after 7 years or 10 years, people say, yeah, you are absolutely right. So a monolith can be actually a good decision. So I would say it could come back, because Java is actually great, and it could be a lot cheaper, to run a monolith on a larger virtual machine or Docker container than trying, to do the same with lots of Lambda functions or whatever.
Yes, absolutely. But still with the evolution of all kinds of orchestration tools,
mm-hmm.
It is much easier to do this orchestration one step ahead, like away from your actual applications, whether those are like small applications or
no load balancing inside, but I mean, you're running larger pieces of code, and
Oh no, and this is how it happens now as well. I think very few teams actually do those. Everyone talks about and now less, but like a few years back, absolutely. Everyone talked about microservices as this is the next level thing, and like absolutely everyone needs to do this and employ this architecture. But what I think everyone was doing, and I hope what everyone was doing, they would actually do the same thing where they would not chop it into the pieces smaller than is reasonable.
Yeah, and
because
liverebel. I almost used liverebel, and JRebel was used a lot. I would say in across Europe, JRebel was crazy popular. Is the zeroturnaround company still around? You know that?
Well, in 2017ish, at the end of the 17, it was acquired by a company. I forget the name. It was acquired by a company.
Mm-hmm.
It was how can I do this? It was such a big deal for me. And then it was such a so it was acquired, and then after that that company was acquired by Perforce as well, right? So it was 2 layers of acquisition. But as far as I know, JRebel is still a product, and you can still purchase that and use that, and I think it's still a sort of a business. Not sure how successful or how large.
Yevgeny Kabanov. I had lots of discussion with him on lots of conferences.
Yeah, he's very smart. He's very smart. He's a brilliant engineer, and he built this very, very interesting startup. Well, together with the team, of course, but he was the main founder and the driving force and the CEO at the later stages.
Mm-hmm.
So you can still do the JRebel thing, and then liverebel, of course, was cancelled, and then there were a few other projects, and at some point of time, my personal journey with them, I kind of moved towards this more marketing-related position and joined the beautiful world of developer relations, which at first we didn't call that.
Where, at zeroturnaround, or where?
Yes, at zeroturnaround, right? And it was before the acquisition. But at some point, so we had this blog portal, right, called Rebel Labs. And we will publish technical content there, various blog posts exploring the problems and solutions with the Java ecosystem, and all kinds of cool things as well there.
Yeah, I remember you had lots of service, productivity boost, which Java EE frameworks I used. So there was also like a yearly report from Zero Turnaround, which was really interesting.
Yeah, we did those. They were very, very interesting. And then we used those to, of course, to kind of assess the ecosystem of people that we could reach. Right, it's very hard to it's very hard to sell something to people that you cannot talk to. Right, so doing a survey is a very efficient way of finding out information about people that you actually can reach, which is your client base and people that kind of like follow you and are willing to spend a few minutes to kind of reward you with their information about. And those are very useful. And I think other players in the ecosystem, in Java ecosystem, also kind of looked at them. The same way currently, I know there are three large surveys that I know and kind of like follow and think about the results. Those are the Stack Overflow survey, which is more generic and less Java oriented. And Java, I mean like the whole JVM ecosystem, right? So when we say Java, but we mean Scala and Kotlin and Groovy and everything. So everything that works on the JVM. There is the JetBrains developer survey, which is more Java oriented because they have Java related products. And then there is this SNCC developer survey, which is SNCC is a security company startup into which a few folks from zeroturnaround joined after the acquisition. Namely, I think the VP of DevRel currently is Simon Maple. Right?
Okay. Exactly. Simon did the virtual Java user group. Simon was big. He created the virtual Java user group, VJAG, back then.
Yeah.
Small world.
Yeah. So at zeroturnaround, we did those excellent things with the world impact, like the virtual jug and those reports and the blog. And then those consumed quite a bit of time. But you also, what I learned is you very rarely want non-developer people, like people without the development experience, to run those initiatives completely. Because somehow, like, developers are like a very interesting group of people, I feel. Is we spend our time on the internet where everyone tries to sell things to you, right? So, and developers are a very lucrative group of people to sell to because first they're personally usually fairly well compensated, so they have money and they have ability to spend that money. And second, they also work for companies who have a lot of money. And if you provide some value for developers, right, developers are so expensive that companies can spend a lot of money on anything that improves productivity, which is obvious, and this is correct. So, but that makes developers a very interesting group to target, like for all sorts of marketing campaigns and everything. So naturally, I feel we develop, and I mean developers, we develop this resistance towards being targeted in various marketing campaigns.
Yeah.
Right. Like it's sort of like in the past, like, you open the page and there will be banners everywhere, and they will be like flashing at you and like asking you questions and this and that. But you kind of like blank all that away, and then you never see them, right? You never click on them. You just they distract you and annoy you, but you kind of don't process them consciously. So the same way, I think, like, you learn to kind of separate like content and the marketing campaigns and the materials and white papers and blog posts from in a very few like seconds, and you like immediately see, okay, this was written by a marketing person with the idea that you need to go and check out the project, right? Or there's a second group of, like, for example, content that you see, like, it was, this was written by an engineer sharing their experience, and you're like, okay, from this I can learn something valuable, right? And you sort of like you do this assessment of which part of the thing it is very, very fast, right? So I think to have efficient content campaigns for developers and kind of get their attention and then build this relationship, you want actually people with development experience to run those.
Yeah.
So
By the way,
that's why
the company is Rockwave.
Yes,
right?
Rockwave, of course. Yes. Rockwave, the company.
And
absolutely.
Rockwave back then create collections for Java, right? What I remember, and C++. Didn't Rockwave back then started with collection framework and stuff like that for C++ or whatever? This is what I remember, or component libraries or something like this. I will have to look it up.
Maybe.
Yeah, because I know
Maybe. They
Rogway
had
for a
a
long
couple of-
time. At the beginning of Java, it was like I will have to look it up. It doesn't matter right now. But you became, from hardcore programmer a DevRel, which also programmed, right?
Yes.
And then what happened? Then you joined Oracle then, or what was the transition from?
Yes. So there was this acquisition, and after the acquisition, I obviously looked around, like what's available here and there, and then our DevRel team was laid off.
Mm-hmm.
So I had some time. Off with the compensation, of course, right? So I didn't have to like immediately jump into things, but at the same time, like acquisitions like that are an excellent trigger for the external people,
mm-hmm.
right? So if you see a company being acquired, like you very often you can think about, oh, will people stay there or are they looking elsewhere? So you kind of like, if you can approach and offer them something and you would like to hire them, it's a great time to actually start the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
So we started the conversation with Thomas,
mm-hmm.
Thomas Wertinger, and at the time there was the clear that GraalVM becomes a thing, and this would be the project that needs to be transferred from being a purely academia thing into the real world project that is used by the industry. And Thomas wanted to start creating this DevRel team to work on that as well, right? So to help with the community connections and to help us with positioning, documentation, articles, and conference talks and everything like that. And by that time, I think I kind of had an eye on Graal for a little bit. Mm-hmm. Right, so I had a blog post about how it works, and I had this randomly, right? So at zeroturnaround, the deal was that I could do content about anything that I think is interesting, mm-hmm. If I maintain some balance with kind of sort of the problem-related things, mm-hmm. right? So I had this session about how to make a new JVM language in under an hour, mm-hmm. right? Which is and there I used an example of the calculator language. Just the calculator arithmetics, mm-hmm. And I think parentheses and something like that. And I built that calculator with the Truffle framework and, mm-hmm. and GraalVM and I run that. And it was full of minor mistakes. And I think I said some things that were not entirely true there because I just didn't know any better. Mm-hmm. But to be honest, back then the information wasn't as readily accessible as well. But I did some research there, right? And I had that, and I did the session a few times. So I kind of knew the components of GraalVM a little bit, and then maybe that is what kind of how Thomas learned about my existence. Mm-hmm. Maybe it was the Rebel Labs blog, or just somehow. And so we started talking, and I joined the team, and it was a very interesting experience since then. Surprisingly, even for the DevRel role, I had one of the interviews was a coding exercise.
Okay.
Which was very interesting.
When you joined Oracle?
I joined February 1st, 2018. So 3 years ago.
What I think, one of your first talks, could it be that you spoke at Devox, Belgium, for Oracle about GraalVM? Or was it before?
Yes, of course.
Because what I remember, you were before me, and I just said, okay, what is the most interesting talk? And it was GraalVM related, performance related, and Oracle database performance or something like this. It was an interesting mix. I think this was you, so as I remember. And could it be that you 2018 or 19 or something like this, 18, I think. That you were
18, absolutely.
Okay, then I really enjoyed your talk because it was funny and interesting. So, and I was a little bit nervous because I was after you in different room, but I stayed until the end and maybe came a little bit late. So I remember your talk about GraalVM and performance, and it was an interesting mix because there was great technical content and with some references to Oracle, which were actually interesting, not like selling stuff, but interesting stuff. So,
thank you.
Yeah. And you know which talk it was?
Very interesting.
What was it? The talk? You remember that?
At Devox Belgium?
Yeah.
I think it was mostly like a general intro to GraalVM and what it can do.
Yeah, maybe.
Or something like maximizing performance with GraalVM, where we would look at how the runtime, the GraalVM runtime, can be used for your Java applications, mm-hmm. right? But sort of performance is a very overloaded term.
And what do you do? Are you still DevRel right now, or
Yes, I'm still I'm still the real person and the individual contributor. And currently, we're still doing the blog posts and the articles and some videos, and less conferences now with the with the situation, of course, in the world. But more, the first year of the COVID, we did more online conferences, and now we just try to do some podcasts and videos and like kind of sort of where we just use the platform that is available, right?
And you joined 2018, so now we have 3 years. So what do you do there? Yeah. So what you did? So what is like? Is it the same position all the time, or it moves a little bit, or shifted, or what's?
Yeah, it is the same position, right? But it is very, very interesting because it's a very versatile project, and the focus of the project and how the community uses it and how we want the ecosystem see it shifts a little bit all the time. So 2018, it was in the beginning, it was in the very early stages of becoming the open source, like it was open source, right? But becoming the project that we think could be used by people, right? So like sort of getting the initial release. And we spent 2018 and we had the release in, I think in the beginning of 2018, somewhere in May or sort of like that. And we prepared the docs and we prepared the website and we started doing the social accounts. And then we started doing the exploration of various topics with content, of course. So the engineering team drives forward features and compatibility and performance, but we had to do the content of talking about how we talk about GraalVM. And the first year, I think, was spent about just talking and elaborating what GraalVM can do to various people, right? And it is very interesting because it can do many, many different things.
This is what I wanted to tell you. So the GraalVM, so I follow GraalVM longer than you, I have to say, thankfully, because the first time I heard about that was by James Gosling, and the project was called Maxwell. And I remember this exactly because it was like Area 51 project, something like this. And this was, I think, at the Sun Microsystem days. And then I asked Thomas Wüttinger about this, and he told me, okay, but it was renamed short after that, because I wrote a blog post about that, and I couldn't find the reference to Maxwell. So there's like, predecessor of GraalVM. And what's interesting in GraalVM is that it is actually one of the Vue projects, which it is like a multifaceted project. So the project, it is a great VM, virtual machine, so you can run your usual workloads. You can use, the multilingual possibilities that you can actually, what I'm doing a lot, I'm loading JavaScript into Java. I can interact with JavaScript. This is because I'm stealing some libraries which are not available in Java from JavaScript, like Mustache or Handlebars, so I can render HTML stuff. And of course, what most developers or product managers know in my project managers and product PMs from various projects, the native capabilities. And what also fascinates me that this project comes from Oracle, and this is almost like the spirit from Sun Microsystems back then. It is like a crazy project which is very successful. And what I would like to do is re-invite you back in a few weeks and just talk about GraalVM, your time, so we can explain to developers whatever you like. Just go the entire path of GraalVM, the several facets, otherwise it was going to be too long. I can explain what I am doing, and we have like a just technical chat about GraalVM if you like, or whatever you prefer.
Yeah, that would be absolutely brilliant.
Because now you don't have to reintroduce yourself, so we can just focus just on the fun stuff. Java for us, and yeah, this is what I really appreciate, because I can learn a lot from you, and we can just do it.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
So now, where people can find you on the internet? Do you have a Twitter or your blog link?
Yes, absolutely. So I mostly go by at Shalev, SHELAJEV, which is the surname. So you can go with Twitter and type that, or GitHub. I don't have my personal blog, which is a bit of a shame. I think I should have, but producing content regularly is hard enough for the job, right? And as we said before, when there is a job on the line and like a hobby activity, the hobby activity never ever wins the battle for the time. So there is no blog, but yeah, Twitter is probably the best. And then I do sort of casually monitor all the resources around GraalVM. And then you can find me there.
Okay.
But Twitter is probably the best.
So you are
YouTube, actually, to be honest.
YouTube. Okay.
If you're watching this, and if you're interested in short videos about GraalVM, just go find me on YouTube and subscribe.
Okay. So everyone has to subscribe. So I will put the link to the show notes. And on Twitter, you are like the news aggregator for GraalVM, right?
Well, not specifically. Quite a bit of content, yes. But I try to amplify all kinds of interesting things, right? And I do have a lot of people that I follow, but I have a very casual unfollow and muting policy. So because just otherwise the signal to noise ratio is very low. So it kind of like when people start no, not people, right? When Twitter accounts start being not what I like them to be, right? I just kind of casually mute them if they go into topics that I found kind of not worth being there. So I kind of curate my list of people there that I follow, and then I have a various mix of very interesting things and people that I try to amplify.
Okay.
All kinds of like hardware projects and all kinds of just general software engineering projects that I think are interesting, not specifically related to Java or GraalVM.
Okay.
But of course, just by nature of the job, there is quite a bit of information about GraalVM.
Perfect. Thank you. And see you soon.
Right. Thank you very much.